Liam Eichenberg, a name that, for Miami Dolphins fans, carries a weight of frustration, uncertainty, and endless debate. It's been 4 years, 4 long years of trying to understand exactly what he is and what he brings to this team. Every offseason, every game, every snap, the same questions linger. Is he a legitimate piece of this offensive line? Is he someone worth keeping around? Or is he just another draft pick that never lived up to expectations? Now, with free agency looming, the Dolphins have a decision to make. And this time, it's one they can't afford to get wrong. The team is at a crossroads, trying to build a roster capable of finally breaking through in the AFC. The offensive line has been a weak point for far too long. If this team is serious about fixing it, then keeping Eichenberg around might not just be a questionable decision, it might be outright detrimental. The story of Liam Eichenberg in Miami is one of inconsistency. It's one of hope, quickly followed by disappointment. Drafted in the second round of the 2021 NFL Draft, expectations were high. He was supposed to be a long-term fixture on this offensive line, someone who could bring stability to a unit that desperately needed it. But year after year, he's been a player in search of a position. He's bounced from tackle to guard, from the left side to the right side, from starter to backup and back again. And through it all, one thing has remained the same: his inability to cement himself as a reliable option. There have been flashes, moments where he looked like he might be turning a corner. Midway through the 2024 season, he put together a stretch of games where he wasn't a liability. He wasn't dominant, but he wasn't getting embarrassed either. For a team that has struggled so much with offensive line play, that felt like a small victory. But just when it seemed like maybe he was figuring things out, the mistakes returned. The footwork issues, the missed assignments, the penalties that killed drives. It's been the same story every season. He gets a chance, he shows some promise, and then he falls apart at the worst possible moments. That's the problem. It's not just that he struggles. It's when he struggles. It's not just that he makes mistakes. It's how frequently they show up in critical situations. Third and short, red zone opportunities, key drives late in games, too often. Eichenberg has been part of the reason those moments don't go Miami's way. And at some point, the question has to be asked: how much longer can this team afford to wait for him to develop into something he's just not? This is where the Dolphins need to be honest with themselves. 4 years is more than enough time to evaluate an offensive lineman. He's had opportunities. He's been moved around, given different responsibilities, asked to adapt. The team has tried to make it work. But at what point does trying to make it work become a waste of time and resources? Some will argue that keeping him as a depth piece makes sense. And in a vacuum, that's not entirely wrong. Offensive line depth is always valuable in the NFL. Injuries happen. Having someone who knows the system, who can step in if needed, is never a bad thing. But this isn't just about depth. It's about building an offensive line that this team can actually rely on. A unit that can protect Tua Tagovailoa, that can open up running lanes, that can hold its own against the best defensive fronts in the league. Is Eichenberg a player you trust in those moments? Is he someone you want stepping onto the field when the season is on the line? If the answer is no, then why waste a roster spot on him? Let's be clear, this isn't about effort. No one questions whether Eichenberg works hard. No one questions his toughness, his willingness to compete. That's not the issue. The issue is performance. The issue is results. And over 4 years, the results haven't been there. The idea of placing a franchise or transition tag on him is beyond ridiculous. That's not even a conversation worth having. Paying $25 million for a player who hasn't even solidified a starting role? Laughable. A complete non-starter. So that leaves one option. The only option that makes sense. Let him walk. Miami has to take this offseason seriously. The AFC is a gauntlet. The Dolphins aren't just trying to keep pace. They're trying to take the next step. They're trying to go from being a good team to being a legitimate contender. That means making hard decisions. That means knowing when to cut ties. This offensive line needs to be better. And that means investing in players who can actually get the job done. Free agency is an option. The draft is an option. But one way or another, this team cannot afford to go into another season hoping that Eichenberg finally puts it together. Because hope isn't a strategy. And after 4 years, it's time to stop hoping. It's time to move on.